Yeah.
We've done it. We've had it. I'm getting to again.
Gibson, and I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. The meeting will be recorded and proceedings will be conducted in accordance with the council's constitution, including procedure rules, which are available on the council's website. Item 1 is the emergency evacuation procedure. There is no planned evacuation drill this evening, and accordingly, if the alarm sounds, it is to be treated as a genuine need to evacuate. There are emergency exits to my right, or through the passageway to my left as you leave the chamber, and then via the main staircase at the front of the building. Please note, lifts must not be used. The assembly point is on the far side of the car park, and it is important that you remain there and do not return to the building until I've announced it is safe to do so. If anyone present will need assistance in evacuating and negotiating the stairs, could you please inform me now so that we can make necessary arrangements to assist you? Thank you. The meeting has a quasi-judicial role and determines the rights and obligations of the applicant. Members must consider each application and everything that is said in a meeting concerning the application and make their decision based solely on their planning judgment and the information available to them. I appear to get a little bit of feedback. I don't know if any members got a mic on. Thank you. Following a decision by members, delegated authority is given to the planning officer to issue the decision notice, and planning permission is not granted or refused until the issue of that decision notice. Any member of the council who is not a member of the planning committee may attend as a visiting member and may speak, having given prior notification. Such visiting members may of course include ward members, and whilst visiting members can speak on an application, they are not permitted to vote. Any member acting as a substitute on a planning committee must have undertaken appropriate training before doing so, and members must remain in the meeting for the whole time that each item is debated and should not vote on that item unless they have done so. I would now like to welcome our public speakers and remind you that you have 3 minutes to speak, and an audible warning of time will be given when there are 30 seconds remaining. If the meeting is deferred to conduct a site meeting, you may speak both at this meeting and at the site meeting, but there will be no further opportunity to speak on the matter when it comes back to the planning committee. The meeting will follow the order set out in the agenda. However, I will amend the order if there's good reason for doing so. And in particular, I will take any items where a member of the public is registered to speak first, before moving on to the remainder of the agenda, and I will verbally reorder the agenda as when appropriate. We now take item 2, which is apologies for absence, and any substitutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies received from Councillor James Hunt. His substitute is Councillor Mike Dendell. And apologies from Councillor Monique Bonney. Her substitute is Councillor Denise Knights. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have Councillor Stephen? Been substituting those.
Yeah, Councillor Stephen substituted by myself, Councillor Baldock.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock. Councillor Beer, please.
Yeah, apologies from Councillor Neil. He was due to finish work at 6, but he's still there.
Good job he's got. Thank you. Item 3, which is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of July 2022 as a correct record. Thank you very much indeed. Item 4 is to invite members' declarations, first of all, of disposable pecuniary interests. Councillor Baldock, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just a matter of clarity. I called 2.2 in. The reason for this was that it was a decision, a permission that was given back in 1996, and I thought it appropriate that the committee have a chance to look at this one, given the length of time. I personally haven't made my mind up on it, and will be interested in what the officers have to say and the information that comes forward.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock. And any disposable non-pecuniary interest, members? Sounding silence, I'll take that as a no. We now move on to item 5 then, which is the planning working group. And I'd like to approve the minutes for that meeting held on the 9th of August 2022. Councillor Beer, please.
On the apologies, could you add Councillor Neil? I didn't.
You did say that at the meeting, yes. Thank you.
Chair, he's not actually a member of the planning working group, but it is included in the minutes towards the end of the minutes, so.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll take that item as the next item on the agenda, which is item 21/503124 land to the north of Elm Lane Minster, GNS Kent. I thank you also for an outline and any updates, please.
Thank you, Chair. There's very little to update because so much was said and discussed at the working party meeting, and there's been such a comprehensive series of questions by members that we've tried to answer all of the points in the update sheets. So I'd really only wish, if any members have any further queries about the issues on the update sheet, I'd leave it there.
Okay, thank you very much. So I now read off the recommendation.
Second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Joyce. Could you just flick your mic on for me?
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you. So, did you want to speak?
I'm happy to speak. I'd like to thank members, Mike.
Very well. I'd like to thank members who came to the site visit. You will have seen the rural setting that it's in. You'll see from my questions I've asked for various comments that were listed in the previous report, and we have no extra comments back. We're meant to make an informed decision, but with so many unanswered questions yet. We asked questions through our planning officers to KCC, and as per the update, we still have no answers from KCC. If we go over to page 3, where it talks about the paddock land, at the bottom paragraph, it says, in any event, even if officers are wrong on this point, it makes only minor weight. I think the report is littered with errors. So all these minor points with minor weight, I think tips the balance that this should be refused. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Dender, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to pick up on flood risk assessment. I've got a part of the report here in front of me, but I'm going to relate to a letter from KCC Flood and Water Management on the 19th of July, which is on the portal. I don't think you actually have it here, but they have pointed out a number of ambiguities in the report from HSP Consulting. HSP Consulting report is not complete. There are a number of appendices missing. I can't find them anywhere on the portal. I would like to ask the officer, is this going to be addressed at reserved matters? This is an outline application at the moment, so it's for access really only. But I'd like to make sure that these are going to be addressed at reserved matters.
Thank you, member. Sorry, I'm not quite sure who that was. I was just checking on the portal, but from my memory, there was a second letter from an exchange of correspondence dealing with the ambiguities. But I can check in just a moment. I can't quite answer this question and check at the same time. But whatever the matter is, we've changed our procedure. The standing advice is you do flood risk assessments at outline and reserve matter stage, because you can't properly deal with drainage until you have a road layout. So if there are any, all you're doing at this stage is establishing the principle of the development. So at reserve matter stage, we can require a slightly more detailed and updated flood risk assessment that could include, accurate calculations, because we know where the roads and open spaces are going. So the member is right. We can correct it at that stage. Just on the point of Kent County Council's responses, we have had some responses from Kent County Council on the infrastructure questions about educational contributions, and on those other matters from where the bus contributions would go. We already know the answers to that. It's in the update sheet. It would go to subsidies towards buses on Sheppey, because they're all subsidised. So we don't feel that there is any reason for further delay, and I don't think that's possible anyway under the Constitution. I stand to be corrected. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Beer, please.
Thank you, Chair. As the officer stands to be corrected, I read that tabled update, and it is not true that all bus services on Sheppey are subsidised. One service is subsidised, and that's the 360 on a Sunday, which is currently proposed for withdrawal. The rest of the services are all commercially operated.
Chair, I was just going from the report on the Kent bus strategy published last month, which stated that. I mean, I can only go on what Kent County Council publish.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock, please.
Just what Councillor Beard was going to say. This is inaccurate.
Thank you. Councillor Winkles, please.
Thank you, Chair. I did pay a visit on the site visit. One thing that does concern me is the proposed access road with the demolition of number 67. If this was to go through with the access road as it is, I'm concerned that the residents at number 65 and number 69 would have to endure traffic noise and traffic pollution, which at the moment they don't have to. I don't think it's a right access route, so I have great reservations supporting this as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, anybody else? Sorry, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I noticed the one is a contentious one. There are several issues I don't agree with, but a lot of these are necessarily legal. But I do find that the fact that Paddock is classed as brownfield site now, that there's an awful lot of land south of the A2, very, very vulnerable to indiscriminate development. I'm sure other council will not let that. I'm not happy that we're crossing that countryside gap. The development runs down to Drake Avenue. It's only a narrow band between there and Oak Lane, which is in half that is agricultural. That makes the best countryside gap you could actually create. But we have a meeting on the 30th of September where they're trying to get the greenway to run through to lays down. This was the original site of the old Sheppey Light Railway. There's still sections of it available. It would have been better put to that kind of use. And basically, the Sheppey Light Railway was never really sold on. It's only ever been transferred for nothing on people doing possessory title. And this is a shame. We lost the entire railway line from Queen to lays down in this manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a little bit annoying when we get these site visits and they're not included in the agenda because we can't refer back to previous reports. But I am concerned that highways, not highway thing, National Highways position on this is because we have a Grampian condition, but as prohibited development that's likely to impact on the 8249 Grovehurst and Stockley roundabout until that work is completed. Now, another 44 dwellings in this area is likely to impact on that to some degree. We were down to something like 3 traffic movements that we were allowed to have. And that was about a year ago. So I suspect we might have used that up. But what is National Highways' position on this? Have they been consulted? And what do they believe the impact is likely to be on Junction 5?
Can I just comment on that? We answered that at the previous update sheet. And there are legal requirements to consult National Highways. They're in the GMDPO. You'll find them in the minutes of the last meeting where we've set them out word for word. It's any development which is likely to cause backing up on the trunk road network. Hence, we have no requirement to consult them, and they have no duty under their licence to comment on any development that does not affect the trunk road network. It's beyond their powers. So it's not a material consideration in this issue. In any event, the Grampians will be lifted by 2024 and 2025 respectively because of the work under the Housing Investment Fund on the various roundabouts in question. So this issue is going away.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock.
I'm wondering in that case why we've asked National Highways to comment on applications that are lower than 44, and they have said we referred to their Grampian condition. So I'm not convinced that this is not going to have an impact on the trunk road network. We haven't asked them. I think that's a serious consideration. We don't know that this is going to be that Stockley roundabout will be completed on schedule. It's still to be completed on both impact and planning condition applies to both of those. So I still have major reservations about this coming forward at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me come back. I think when we look at the 5-year land supply, we need to always look at case law. And I think if we look at land off the Jubilee Fields, Upchurch, when the inspector was on his planning balance, he said, and this is obviously a case for our authority, is the 5-year land supply is no more than 4.6. We have 4.8 now. The shortfall is therefore a concern, but cannot be said to be acute. So I think we need to bear it in mind, but as said, it is not acute. The council has embarked on a local plan review and is actively addressing the shortfall with publication of its housing delivery test action plan.
Again, our legal officer
And
may
I haven't
comment.
finished.
Oh, sorry.
It then goes again at the end of it. It says the shortfall of 5-year land supply is not acute, and then the inspector refused permission. I think this case is relevant, and I think the 5-year supply is relevant in this case, but I think we've got to follow case law.
Chair, it's not case law. It's an appeal precedent, and each inspector comes to their own view. Each appeal precedent is, of course, important, and we took it into account. The decision on that site was not a disapplication of the tilted balance, it was the application. And the inspector felt that it had less weight because it was relatively small. I don't think acute was the right word. That relates the time. I mean, it was marginal, I think is what he meant. But he did say it was concern, and you need to read the appeal decision as a whole. And if members wish to raise as a precedent, perhaps they should read it as a whole. And also because in the tilted balance in that particular case, there were landscape and other issues that don't apply in this case, which tilted this other way. I mean, the whole point of the tilted balance is it can tilt either way, depending on the materiality and weight of the decisions. It does not in any way imply that the 5-year supply policy does not apply in the NPF. It does not imply that the policy in 11D in the tilted balance does not apply. It was a very careful and wisely worded decision, but it's very different material considerations to this site, and each case needs to be considered on its merits.
Councillor Jones?
Obviously, I haven't finished. Thank you for letting me come back, Chair. I think next we need to go back to looking at the buses. The latest bus timetable here, bus services road twice a day, and that's Monday to Friday. That doesn't include public holidays or weekends. So, 1/3 of the time, there is no buses on this road. I don't see how this is sustainable development. There is better locations than this for development. This one should not be approved.
Thank you. Members, I don't see anybody else indicating.
Should I have a recorded vote, please, Chair?
Yes, you can. Okay, Councillor Beard,
Against.
Councillor Knight,
Against.
Councillor Darby,
Against.
Councillor Eakin,
Against.
Councillor Hall,
Against.
Councillor Henderson, Councillor Dendell,
Against.
Councillor Jackson,
Stone.
Councillor Joyce,
Against.
Councillor Marchington,
Against.
Councillor Martin,
For.
Councillor Rolls,
For.
Councillor Simmons,
For.
Councillor Baldock,
Against.
Councillor Valentine,
Stay.
Councillor Winkless,
Against.
and myself, 4. So that's That's 6 for, 9 against and 2 abstentions.
Chair, I made it 5-10-2.
Me too. 2. Five, 10, 2.
Councillor Winkless, could I just check what you voted, please?
Against.
Again, thank you. So correction, members, and apologies. That's 5 for, 10 against and 2 abstentions. So now I need a motion from the floor. Reasons for refusal, please. Councillor Henderson.
Can I just ask, before we get a motion from the floor, if we can bear in mind the points you made at the beginning of the meeting and the beginning of every meeting, that we need proposals which have justification on planning grounds? Because I've sat and listened to this, I wasn't able to attend the last meeting because I was away, and couldn't attend the working group because I was away. but I've read the documentation carefully and I hear all the comments that have been made, but I haven't heard a single one which is a justified planning reason for refusing this. So can we please address that for those of us who are looking to make a sensible decision, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, of course, Councillor Henderson, and thank you. Just bringing our legal officer in there if I may this stage.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to remind the committee again, there's been discussion about the application of the tilted balance at paragraph 11D of the NPPF. The tilted balance always applies when you have less than a 5-year supply of housing. And I appreciate what Councillor Jays has said about that inspector's report, and I would back up what had been said by the officer. Inspectors' reports in appeals are not case law. Case law comes from the High Court. Inspectors' reports are persuasive, but they are not binding, and they all relate back to matters of planning judgment and about weighing the benefits and the harms. And that's again your function as committee, is to consider the planning merits and benefits and the planning harms, and you need to evidence through your decision how, in this particular case, because of the application of 11D and the tilted balance, that the harms outweigh the benefits and that they do so significantly and demonstrably, which is what the NPPF says. So if you could just bear that in mind when you're formulating your reasons, because that will allow you to have a more robust defence appeal. Thank you.
Councillor Winkles.
Can I suggest, as the reasons, one of the reasons I voted against, the reason why I voted against it was that the effect of the access road to the existing properties that stand at number 65 and number 69, which now basically have got peace and quiet, and they will be affected by noise and possibly air pollution. One reason.
Councillor Baldock.
I would suggest one reason is the impact of the amenity impact on local residents. The loss of open land and the loss of the gap that's mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so with its couch in kind of more plain planning terms, what Councillor Winkles has said.
Can I just stress that this is not a local countryside gap in the local plan, and the loss of a private view is a private matter, not a public matter. At a stretch, you could have a loss of open countryside, but it would not be possible to defend that because it complies with policy ST3 in the local plan. You could at a stretch, as the councillor said, have harm from noise from the road, but as the legal officer stressed, that needs to be put into a balance and needs to be considered against the gains of the site from housing and other purposes. So it would be a minor loss to 1 or 2 households and the gain of 44. So at appeal, you need to be able to demonstrate that balance, that it convincingly, the wording from the NPPF, it meets that strict test.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, I specifically didn't mention private views. I said the loss of amenity and the loss of the countryside. If I used the word gap incorrectly, then just the loss of the countryside, which I think is important. It's whether or not we consider the noise impact and the loss of the countryside is worth, outweighs the so-called benefits of 44 houses. I know all about tilted balance. It applies to everything that we've done for the last 4.5 years. Appeal judgments go either way. We've had plenty of appeals upheld that would have contributed to the 5-year supply, and we've had some that we've lost as well. I think in this particular case, the argument is, my perspective, was that the impact outweighs the benefit. I think that inflicting more noise on even a few local residents is hard to justify, and the loss of the countryside and access to the countryside is, again, not something I think we should be supporting especially in this location where we've also got considerable traffic congestion all along the lower road. I know that's not a highways issue, but we'll get support for. We should perhaps have had an independent transport assessment of this. Maybe we have, but yeah, the lower road is intolerable at the best of times, and we haven't got highways, national highways commenting on this. Does give me some concern, because I know other sites have had those comments, and what happens if we grant this and then national highways say, well, you can't build anymore in this location. So yeah, it's not something we should be just ignoring. It is an important thing that they have got this grampian condition on, and it applies to virtually the whole of this area.
Thank you. I'm just going to invite our head of planning to comment.
That's better. National Highways could have issued a holding direction, and they chose not to do so. So I don't think we can use that as a reason for refusal that we could substantiate.
So I thought we didn't ask them.
It's not within their
Remit,
at the moment.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not within their remit to comment on this application, but nevertheless, we would find it difficult to support a reasonable refusal based on those grounds.
Chair, I wouldn't say it's defensible at appeal, but I've suggested in the chat there, sorry, that should be tilted, the outline of a barely defensible reason for refusal. You might want to add traffic grounds, but I think with our independent traffic consultants not supporting refusal, I think we would not be able to find anybody to defend a traffic ground on appeal. And we might not be able to find a planning consultancy to defend the other grounds, but it's less of a long shot. So I don't know what the head of planning thinks. It's her recommendation, but that's the outline of a potential reason for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Jones.
Do question the independence of the title consultant. Asking an architectural firm their opinion on building is interesting. But I wonder what the legal officer opinion is on the brownfield argument on this site is.
Sorry, so are you asking me to clarify whether I believe that it is brownfield land? Yes, it is classed as brownfield land, 100% being equestrian use, because to have an equestrian use on land that was previously in another use requires a change of use, and a change of use constitutes development under the Town and Country Planning Act. Developed land constitutes PDL, so yes, it is PDL.
1st of July, there was no industry at this site, so did it have permission to be used as equine use, or should it have been greenfield and not used for equine use?
Again, there may not be a recorded planning history, but if it's outside a period of immunity, that use has become lawful.
So let's come back on that. How do we know how long this has been going on for if there's no planning history? It's
that would be a matter of record of photographs. We could look at aerial shots, etc., to see what's gone on the land. That's usually how it would be ascertained. I mean, I can't comment because I don't know the history of the site at all. It's that's something to the planning officer, but yeah, that would be the answer to the question. It requiring a change of use means that it's development, therefore that makes it previously developed land.
I'm going to bring in Councillor Martin, then I'm going back to our head of planning.
I would like to propose that we accept the wording that the officer has so kindly given us, despite the fact that I completely disagree and think we should have actually gone through, because we're not going to win any appeal on this, but I'll propose it anyway. Just to show you.
Right, I'll just get our head of planning to read it out.
In applying the tilted balance, the harm to the loss of countryside and the loss of amenity from the construction of the access road outweighs the planning benefits.
Shall I just say that there should be an Oxford Common after countryside, otherwise it's ambiguous. Sorry, you have to be very precise, of course, in planning.
Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, could we read that out again? I had a couple of motorbikes going by.
In applying the tilted balance, the harm to the loss of countryside and the loss of amenity from the construction of the access road outweighs the planning benefits.
So it's basically focused on the construction of the access road.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, and the loss of countryside. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Councillor Jones, very quickly.
Thank you, Chair. I do think this goes against ST3, our policy and local plan, settlement hierarchy, being built in open countryside and outside built a boundary. I think it goes against ST4, the allocation which mentions buildings within the defined boundary. I think it goes against ST6, Shepley Area Strategy, CP2, promoting sustainable transport, CP4, Section 5, retaining and enhancing features which contribute to the local character and distinctiveness. And I refer to the railway track on this. I also think CP4 Section 6, conserving and enhancing. What else have we got? CP6.
Okay.
CPA, conserving and enhancing the historical environment, and that's paragraph 189 and 197 in the MPPF. DM3, the rural economy, and that's again paragraph 84 in the.
Yeah, Councillor Jones, can you say? We can't submit an endless list.
What's the point of having a local plan if you don't use it?
Just to remind members, every reason for refusal we give that we can't support with evidence is a potential partial award of costs. I mean, we can use a local plan, but it's not a laundry list to scrape through to find as many reasons for refusal as possible. I think our advice as officers would be to finally focus any reason for refusal. In particular, as the report goes into in some detail, the scheme is policy compliant with the key policy on the urban boundary, which is policy ST3.
Thank you. I would agree. That's my intervention. Councillor Henderson.
Only to say, we still haven't from around the room had any detailed viable suggestions for refusal, so I will second Councillor Martin's proposal, because
Thank you.
it's clear that the meeting doesn't want to approve it, but we've not had any sensible reasons for turning it down.
Thank you. So members, those in favour?
What's the motion, Chair?
I can read out the reason for refusal again.
No, it's what's up there.
Councillor Beard.
I think, and it's not helpful that it's he's been put in the chat, but Mr. Algar's made a very valid point about, are we just refusing it because of construction or also the ongoing use of the access road? Because that will be the impact on amenity, not construction. And I think Mr. Algar makes a very valid point.
Yeah, we can add construction and use of the access road. I mean, that's a useful clarification because it's the same issue.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Beard. Thank you, Mr. Algar, for your intervention there. So members. Councillor Henderson, you happy with that as a seconder? Thank you. So those in favour?
Record your vote, please, Chair.
So Councillor Beard.
Or
Councillor Knights.
Or
Councillor Darby.
Or
Councillor Eakin. Councillor Hall. Councillor Henderson. Councillor Dendo. Councillor Jackson.
or
Councillor Jays. For. Councillor Marchington.
or
Councillor Martin.
against.
Councillor Rolls.
For.
Councillor Simmons.
Against.
Councillor Baldock.
For.
Councillor Valentine. Councillor Winkles.
For.
Myself against. So that's 13 for, 3 against and 1 abstention. Should be refused, subject to issuing decision notice. Thank you. So members, we now move on to the deferred items, and what I intend to do here is take deferred item 1 first, and then move on to the other prison item, which is 2.6. As they both have speakers and they are the same speakers, so it makes a bit more sense to bring those forward first. So the first one we're going to do is deferred item 1, which is HMP Standard Hill, Church Road, East Church, ME12 4AA. I'll thank you for an outline and any updates, please.
Thanks very much, Chairman. It's Jim Wilson here. I'm sharing the layout, and the key elements of the proposal are shown in red. Got the 2 proposed accommodation blocks, a small building just to the north for a record store, a library and office building, and an extension to the existing car park. Planning permission is sought for those elements. Firstly, members will note the tabled update. Following the deferral of the application at the May meeting, further consideration has been given to the potential highway implications of the proposal, including the provision of extra information by the applicant. Mindful that the application is one of 2 current proposals, as the Chairman said, for additional prison accommodation that are before this committee, and that concerns have been raised by East Church Parish Council about the highway implications of these prison proposals. As set out in the papers, both KCC Highways and the Council's independent highway consultant have provided further comments, and both raised no objection. Members will note the various conditions in the report, including condition 33, which would require a travel plan. Officers conclude that the application should be approved, subject to those conditions, as I said, that are set out in the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Could I now invite Parish Councillor Kathleen Carter, please, to speak on this item?
East Church Parish Council is strongly opposed to the application, not on the principle of the much needed expansion, but because of the inadequate road structure serving the cluster. We have for many years thought the installation of traffic calming in Lower Church Road, with prison traffic continually ignoring the 30-mile-an-hour limit, causing much danger to local residents. Church Road provides the only access to the prison sites, and as such, there are bottlenecks during the day, particularly at shift changeover. When there is an accident, there is no alternative access and the traffic quickly backs up to the bypass. The lower road, East Church Road junction, is difficult to turn out of due to the volume of traffic emanating from the prison side. The levels of staffing and occupancy of the sites are 14 years out of date. This needs to be updated before the planning application is given consideration. It needs to include not only permanent occupancy, but also temporary occupancy in order to reflect the true figures, as well as complete figures for staff, prison staff, both operational, support staff, agency staff, permanent and temporary workforce. The road infrastructure is already unsuitable for the existing prison sites. Before any further increase and expansion to any of the prison on the cluster, the road infrastructure must be addressed through an S106 agreement with a report on how to permanently mitigate on the immediate surrounding roads and to provide safety for the residents in the area through robust traffic calming. Reports and statistics cannot replace the valid experience of residents on a daily basis. A Section 106 agreement is an agreement between a developer and a local planning authority about measures that the developer must take to reduce the impact on the community. East Church Parish Council asks for an S106 or a CIL in order to fund active physical road calming in order to protect both residents and the prison community. There have been no further meetings with the agents who had agreed to come back to us with proposals to mitigate the existing speed and safety issues. It is incumbent on Kent Highways and Transport and Soho Borough Council Planning Committee to request an S106 with the MOJ to provide the finances for a road physical deterrence in order to mitigate the traffic problems and therefore allow the prison expansion. There is a duty of care on all parties to ensure that the safety measures are put in place before the prison expansion is given permission. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Thank you. Could I now invite Catherine Morgan, please, to speak on this item?
Taking on the application of the which also forms part of the shared present cluster. It's understood that the principle of the vote is acceptable to them, and therefore this speech focuses entirely on highway matters. An independent highways review is undertaken by the project centre. Additional information is provided by the individual. A cumulative impact assessment is undertaken, taking into account the development proposals at HMP Belgrade and HMPs as part of the transport statement for HMP. This assessment found that the cumulative impact of the councils would not have a significant highways. This assessment has been reviewed by both the independent highways consultant as well as cases. So concluded that the assessment is acceptable. The independent highways review concluded that the additional information provided by the applicant is satisfactory and the application is considered acceptable on highway grounds for the following reasons. The applicant has provided the anticipated number of additional prisoners to access to their own vehicle on site, 19 in total, which is anticipated to generate around 38 two-way trips, likely outside of the peak hours. It acknowledged that the remaining 19 additional prisoner journeys are likely to be by sustainable modes of travel, such as car sharing. The applicant has undertaken a traffic survey demonstrating there is not an existing road speed issue on Church Road. Avoided 85th percentile speeds noted to be 25.8 miles per hour and 28.2 miles per hour for north and southbound roads respectively, indicating that vehicles are considered to be travelling within the speed limit. In line with ACC requests, the applicant has committed to investigating the introduction of a minibus service to and from Sheerness Railway Station for key Sheerness areas. ACC Highways has also provided a further response confirming and maintaining that they have no objection to the application. NRJ met with Pace Church Parish Council during the application process to discuss their concerns. It was agreed that a meeting would be arranged with KCC to discuss potential highway mitigation measures. However, prior to arranging this meeting, KCC provided a response to the application proposals, concluding that no highways mitigation was needed. KCC therefore declined to meet as the matter was resolved with no respect. It is noted that East Church Parish Council has maintained their objection to requested highways mitigation. However, it is also noted that neither KCC's comments nor the independent highways advice have sought traffic calming measures. No highways mitigation is therefore required for this application. In any event, MOJ cannot provide mitigation to a public highway. It needs to be undertaken by a local authority. As stated, the local highways authorities confirm this is not required. It is considered all outstanding matters to the subdivision are resolved. It's imperative that a decision is made on this application this evening. Therefore, respectfully request the application, the committee approve the applications.
Thank you. And I'll move the officer recommendation. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second chair on Mike this time.
Thank you, councillor Jace. Members, councillor Beers.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think, as I said when we discussed this last time, I have absolutely no problem with the principle of the application at all. I think it is much needed and welcomed. My concern was the highways, and I agreed with the parish council's comments on the application. I'm still minded, or still concur with the views of the parish council, because like them, I know the local area and I know what it's like to stand on Church Road and see vehicles coming past and taking wind mirrors off of cars. However, we have got an independent consultant's report. The independent consultant's report concurs with KCC. Whilst I might disagree with both of them, we are where we are. So I will be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, councillor Jones, please.
Thank you, Chair. So we're being asked to house an extra 120 people in our borough by the government. This will have an effect on our roads and our healthcare system, which are already beyond stretch. It will affect our dental services. And it's 120 people with accommodation doesn't come off our housing targets. Is there any way through section 106, that we can get improvements in our healthcare that will be stretched? People will be sitting next to people handcuffed at hospitals in a dense position.
Now, we found that hasn't been requested. Councillor Jones.
So we don't know the CCG's opinion on what effects this is going to have on the healthcare network.
Chairman, sorry, this is Jim Wilson here. I don't know if sound was coming and going slightly. I don't know if you're expecting me to comment on that point at this point.
Yes, if you'd be so kind.
I mean, other colleagues may sort of have a view on this, but I mean that certainly isn't something that I'm aware we've ever done previously with any of the applications for the various prisons that we've got at Eastchurch. So no, I wouldn't have thought that's something we would normally look to do, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Baldock, please.
Given that residential care homes count towards our numbers, and we have to go through various checks when that comes up, why do these not count to our numbers? And why are these not treated in much the same way? Because there's the same number of people moving in, and just say accommodation, I think we should.
I'll let our head of planning comment on that.
There is, of course, Councillor Baldock, a fundamental difference between a care home and a prison, in that people occupying accommodation at prison tend not to have a choice about it.
People in residential care homes.
Councillor Martin.
To back the officer, this one, be careful what you wish for, because instantaneously, all those prisoners, when they get released, would count as having been residing in the borough for the period of time and qualify for the housing register. And bearing in mind somewhere around 60% be prisoners with no fixed abode, you've just probably quadrupled the current overspend on temporary accommodation. You don't want it.
Okay, thank you. Members, I don't see anybody else indicating. So those for recommendation. And those against? and abstentions. So that's 13-4. 4 against. So permission is granted subject to issue of decision notice. We now move on to item 2.6, please. And this one is 21/506787/ PSINF. Which happening on page 289. I thank you also for an outline and any update, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. This is an application for the expansion of HMP Elmley, which is located in the Sheppey Prison Cluster. The proposal is seeking to provide a 4-storey house block to accommodate 247 prisoners, which you can see located as the Cross building in the diagram in front of you. They're also looking to provide a workshop and educational building, which will be 2 storeys in height, and a proposed admin building, which sits just to the south there. The proposal will sit on part of an existing playing field, and replacement in terms of a 7-a-side football pitch and a multiple-use games area will be provided. In addition, a sports storage area, an expansion to property store, and an expansion to the planting area for the prison will also be provided, alongside 80 car parking spaces, which sit outside of the walls of the prison. As you can see, these are the 80 car parking spaces indicated here on my screen. These are the proposed elevations for the house block, for the workshop and education building, the proposed administration building, the sports hall and the expansion to the property store. And these are some general photographs of the area. Here we're looking up the Northern Woods towards Masburn Road, the car parking area. These are some internal shots where you can see the existing house buildings on site and the playing field. The officer recommendation is set out in the committee papers. As per the tabled updates, KCC Highways and the Independent Project Centre Highways Assessment came back, both with no objections to the proposal. Some additional conditions were suggested by KCC Highways, which would be included, and these are provided on your tabled update.
Thank you very much. Could I now invite Police Councillor Kathleen Carter, please, to speak on this item? Okay, I understand Councillor Carter has left the building. So can I then invite Catherine Morgan, please, to speak on this item?
Dialogue with KCC Highways in respect of both HMP Elmley and Highways. Independent Highways review of HMP Elmley has also been undertaken by the board. As stated, a cumulative impact assessment has been undertaken, taking into account the development proposals of HMP Elmley and HMP South. This assessment found that the cumulative impact proposals did not have a significant highways impact. Assessment has been reviewed by both the Independent Highways Consultant as well as KCC, both included in the assessment. As part of the cumulative assessment, the applicant has demonstrated that there is not an existing road speed issue on Church Road. We recorded 85% on speeds, rated to be 25.8 miles per hour and 28.2 miles per hour, northbound and southbound roads respectively, indicating that vehicles are considered to be travelling within speed limits. Additional information has been provided to KCC Highways in respect of their consultation response. I note that KCC Highways have run their own assessment of this topic as at HMP, including legal visits. Although this was slightly higher than the assessment, it will still not have a significant highways impact, as these visits will take place outside of the. Therefore, KCC Highways has confirmed they have no objection to the Project Centre has also confirmed they have no objection to the. As stated, the MOJ has engaged with the Parish Council. Continued objection is noted. However, KCC has confirmed that no highways mitigation is needed. Only the local highways authority. It is considered that the highways element of the schemes are fully assessed, including a review by the Independent Highways Consultant Project Centre. The MOJ has engaged with Sporting England for 3 meetings to discuss this facilities provided. Noted that Sporting England has maintained their objections to the. With the council's new sports facilities to be provided will mitigate the loss of. Also of note, within our discussions, we did investigate the sporting group whether they would accept section 6 contribution to improve open space elsewhere. Sporting men advised they would not consider it. The government has a priority to increase prison capacity across the country in order to address greater shortfall in cases. As such, this project is a priority of the government in helping to address it. It's imperative that we receive a decision on this evening. There is no merit in deferring this application. The issues of completely high risk of forensic but further assessment is necessary and will not change the process. We therefore respectfully request that the committee approve the application.
Thank you very much. Can I move the officer recommendation?
Second, Chair.
Councillor Joyce. Councillor Beard.
I won't go through them again, but I'll echo my comments from the last one. But on obviously this isn't in our gift to grant because it's a Secretary of State decision. But I would just pick up on the fact that Sports England very rarely are movable on their position. Their policy is set out, and if you go against it, they will object, and you can very rarely get them. And I've had that recently with an application at county where they objected to a former school playing field where the grass was about this high and it hadn't been used in 7 years, and they still objected to it based on looking at satellite imaging. I do think the introduction of a 3G pitch here is welcome. I think that's a sensible solution to removing the full grass pitch. So I will support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. So that's everybody else indicating. Councillor Martin.
Might not like the design, and I would normally in the other settings say we really must look at this design, but quite frankly, it's in keeping with the streets in that area, so get my support.
Thank you. Councillor Tender.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to put on record, like Councillor Beard, the highway's conclusion about Church Road, I find quite frankly laughable. The 28.5 speed on average is laughable, but they are a statutory consultancy. I disagree with what they are saying. I don't think they observe the road at the right times, measure it at the right times. They go in times that problem doesn't occur, but they are the statutory consultancy, and I don't think we have any choice but to approve the application.
Okay, thank you. So members, those in favour of the officer recommendation? Those against? And abstentions? 15 for and 2 abstentions. So Commission is granted subject to the Secretary of State's approval, of course. Thank you, members. We're now going to back in time to item 2.1.
Chairman.
Yes, Constance, yes.
My apologies, Chairman. I should have declared non-pecuniary interest in that I am chairman of the trustees of the municipal charities who own the neighbouring recreation ground. It is on a 38-year lease to Swansea Council. Nonetheless, I need to declare that.
Okay, duly noted. Thank you.
I also am a trustee of municipal charities, so I've been to there as well as council.
Thank you. Noted, Councillor Jackson. Okay, so this is item 21/502545/12, and it's the Railway Depot Station Road, Faversham. And can I now invite Town Councillor Saunders, please, to speak on this item?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm speaking on behalf of the Town Council this evening. While the Council is supportive of many aspects of the proposal and pleased that it will provide much needed 1 and 2 bedroom properties, we think a major opportunity to improve local cycling and walking infrastructure will be missed if this proposal carries forward in its present form. Our developing neighbourhood plan promotes Faversham as a walking and cycling town, and the last iteration of Swales' transport strategy made it clear that a modal shift towards active travel is needed if major development is to go ahead in Faversham. The developers' previous proposals for this site would have allowed the opening up of an active travel link between the station, the main employment hub in the town, Jubilee Way, and the upper end of Whitstable Road, making it far easier for residents and workers to travel within the area between Love Lane and the station without clogging our streets with yet more traffic. This current proposal loses that link, replacing it with a more complicated route through the Wreck, which is not navigable by those with mobility needs and which is likely to bring cyclists and pedestrians into conflict with each other. The justification given is that the developer doesn't own all the land required, but this was not identified as an insuperable problem previously. I've read the officer's report with interest. There are a number of conditions imposed which aim to protect air quality, reduce the risk of climate change, promote sustainable transport, energy efficiency and sustainable development. An active travel link through the site would do all of these things, but there is no evidence that any serious discussion has taken place with the developer to reintroduce it to the plans. Committee members, Swale has committed itself to ambitious targets in relation to the climate emergency. They will only be achievable if we push up active travel journeys. It's time to start holding developers to account on the contribution they make to enabling active travel. On behalf of the Town Council, I would urge you to delay approving this application until a real dialogue has taken place with the developer about how this site can best contribute to achieving the active travel improvements that are vitally necessary for all of Faversham to have a sustainable future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders, and members, I don't know if you spotted the deliberate mistake. I did invite the officer to give us outline and any updates, so at this point I'd like to do that, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. This is an application for residential and commercial development at the railway depot in Faversham. The application site is located within the built confines of Faversham and is located in close proximity to the train station. The proposal will see the introduction of a commercial unit in the form of office space, which will be single-storey towards the front of the site. 32 residential units in the forms of flats for a 30-block flat and 2 one-bedroom semi-detached bungalow will be provided. A landscaping strategy has also been provided alongside the application, which includes the removal of trees along the northern boundary and replacement to allow greater light to residential properties. These are the proposed elevations of the commercial unit and the proposed semi-detached pair. And these are some site photos, which include the entrance to the access, the bridge and previously developed site. And these are some images from the bridge looking over to the east into Jubilee Way commercial area. Forgive me, I have not included the elevations of the Black Block. I'll just open this up for you. And these are the elevations of the flat block. A pedestrian access and cycle access would be provided onto the Faversham Recreation grounds. Thank you for your time. Also, apologies, a tabled update item which was received at 5:30 this evening. Network Rail resubmitted an objection to the scheme. A summary of these objections has been provided to you in paper form. It relates to the land purchase, the failure to connect to Jubilee Way, and concerns with noise pollution and labour disputes between Network Rail and future residents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Could I now invite Josh Wilson, please, to speak on this item?
Chair, councillors, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. Our proposals for the rail yard represent the opportunity to redevelop a previously developed brownfield site in an extremely sustainable town centre location within Faversham. This apartment-led development will offer a different form of accommodation to that being constructed on other sites in the local area, which tend to be 3, 4 and 5 bedroom houses. Here, we're proposing 12 one-bedroom apartments, 18 two-bedroom apartments and 2 semi-detached bungalows. In addition to the residential element of the development, we're proposing to build a single-storey office building of 246 square metres on the access to the site at Station Road. And we can today confirm that we're in talks with the Newton Place Doctors Surgery to move their offices out of their existing building, which for some of you who know is about a minute walk away, to our site, which will free up much needed space for practical medical use in their existing building. We promoted this site through the Faversham Town Council call for sites process as part of their neighbourhood plan consultation. And we can confirm that as of the 29th of April this year, the rail yard has been allocated in the emerging neighbourhood plan for residential development under reference FNP 10. From the pre-act stage to today, we've worked closely with the council's planning department and the conservation officer in creating a first-class development suitable for this area. Further developments include a significant on-site biodiversity net gain of 18.79%. Utilisation of renewable technology such as solar panels on the apartment blocks and active on-site electric vehicle charging points, and over £80,000 expected Section 106 contributions. In addition to this, we'll be creating a new pedestrian and cycle access through our sites to the recreation ground, which will improve connectivity and significantly shorten the journey to and from the train station for visitors to the recreation ground, Whitstable Road and the Eurocentre Business Park. As Councillor Saunders mentioned, the reason I can't sit in front of you here and say we can connect to our existing estate is because we simply do not own the land, and we haven't since 2008. And there's in addition to that, there's a lease over the land, which is over 10 years already, and we've submitted that to the council already. To summarise, this application represents the opportunity to redevelop a brownfield, sustainable town centre site to provide much needed residential and employment space, which is brought forward by a developer with a track record for delivery in the Swale Borough. And finally, I must mention, we've obviously just received that letter from Network Rail. In our response dated the 24th of January, we handed all of our correspondence to Network Rail to the Swale Council because we did consult extensively with them before, but they just did not want to talk to us. And we've given you that evidence. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I now move the officer recommendation. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Martin.
I'll kick us off on this one. I think actually this is quite a good design. We have a design here that is in keeping with the buildings around. It has a good nod to the railway heritage in the area, with buildings of a very similar design to the listed engine sheds to the opposite side of the tracks, which are in absolute disrepair, but we can't deal with those here. In terms of the reasons from the town council for seeking us to delay this, I think the letter that we have in front of us that was given, that was sent in by Network Rail today, says it all. We didn't get enough money for it because we didn't think that someone was going to build houses on it. We will give away our piece of land that would allow you to walk across it if you refuse this planning permission because they're nasty, nasty people. Well, I'm sorry. You don't get to get your land back just because you think someone's going to make more money than you thought they would. That's not how life works. In addition to that, as has been mentioned by the agent there, it is a scheme that does its darndest environmental side. I think they've worked very well and very hard to come up with something that is an exemplar of what can be done on small brownfield sites near to train stations. So well done to the developer, and it will have my support.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, please.
Yeah, can I say to members of the committee who don't necessarily know this site, and it is somewhat tucked away next to the railway line, it is a good proposal. I have no doubt of that. It provides housing on a brownfield site, plus some offices, provides housing on a brownfield site, 1 and 2 bedrooms, immediately accessible to the railway line for commuters, and a type of housing which is undoubtedly needed. I appreciate the points that Councillor Saunders made on behalf of the Town Council, but somebody I'm sure will correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason that you can't get a simple access there is because the patch of land that we would like to use is actually owned by Network Rail, and they haven't sold it to the developer. So we do end up with a small problem on active travel, but there is a pedestrian and cycle route to the Wreck, and from the Wreck you can immediately get down to the Whitstable Road and out to the east side of Faversham. So in my view, it is an excellent use of land. I would mention there are some neighbouring properties who have some concern about the position of a wall adjacent to their properties, and can I simply ask that officers will take into account the detail of that issue so that any problems which might have been caused are removed, but otherwise I think it is a development well worth supporting it, and I will certainly be voting in favour of this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Beard, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I echo the comments of Councillor Martin, and I think this is good use of a brownfield site. And when the elevations were shown, I think it is quite fitting to the side of a railway line. It does look like old engine sheds, that kind of. It says on the report that, I know we've heard from the Town Council, but it says on the report that the reason for referral is parish council objection. But under consultation, and I've just flipped through it again, I cannot find the parish council's comments in the officer's report. Unless they're somewhere else, but they're not under consultation where they usually are.
Apologies, they're not where they usually are, but they are on paragraph 7. One minute, I'll just find that.
7217.
7217. And it continues on to page 204 in your agenda pack.
Well, I was quite surprised going on from that the applicant has said that they've not only been in consultation with the Town Council, but they put it in their forthcoming neighbourhood plan. And there's now an objection. I think the officers have got this spot on.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson, please.
Yes, I agree with all what's been said. I really welcome this. It was quite an eyesore before. I think it'll be a vast improvement. I'm also very pleased about the news about the offices for the medical practice, which will enhance more medical care in Faversham. And I can't see any objection to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Winkles.
Thank you, Chair. Though I've listened to the concerns of the Town Council, Julian Saunders tonight on this, I do feel that if we were to turn this down, it would be thrown at the cold. To use that phrase, it's a brownfield site. I'm an ex-railway employer. I know the area very well. It's been a derelict site for 20 odd years, if not more, when the Faversham railway works closed down. It's basically a good design, and I'm totally in favour of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Simmons, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I too welcome this and welcome the additional access to the recreation ground. I think it would be nice if there was a pedestrian access through to the Jubilee Way, and perhaps that could come in the future. I think one of the improvements is that the original plan that came forward, or proposal, sorry, was that there's going to be a vehicle access, and there was a lot of concern about cars then coming up through the Jubilee Way and then coming out into both by Beaumont Terrace and Station Road. And I think that would have been a real problem for residents. Councillor Henderson mentioned he was referring to Preston Malthouse, and because of the topography of the land, the bedrooms at the rear of the Malthouse, the bedroom windows are below the street level for the access, and I echo what Councillor Henderson said about, please officers, could you just make sure that the residents in the Malthouse do have some protection, either fencing or something of that nature, to protect their properties. But otherwise, I think it's a project to be supported. And yes, for those people who know Jubilee Way, the old rail goods yard and goods that is the same sort of brick with a corrugated roof, and so I think this design is very appropriate. And if you look at the plan on page 233, there is a in the middle of the railway, between the two railway lines, there is a goods shed there, which is exactly the same, with sort of dark brown bricks. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I'm just going to give our officer the opportunity to speak on the wall situation.
The neighbours, the adjacent neighbours at the Malthouse would be protected under party law legislation in terms of the construction around that area. And indeed, I think you can see from the landscaping plan, there's a lot of effort to improve the boundary along that side of the site that's been put forward by the applicants.
Councillor Valentine, please.
Chair, I agree with a lot of what's been said. I think there's a lot to like about this application. Certainly, we're very short of brownfield sites in the first one. So it's good to see them coming forward. And we're short of 1 and 2 bedroom houses in Faversham and affordable housing. So that's all to be welcome. And I agree with the comments about the design of the buildings. But one concern I have is about all the new residents, whether there's going to be a problem of noise from the railway. And I haven't spotted further discussion about submission by Network Rail. I'm going to miss further any mitigations. Sort of like to. And I fully support the comments that Councillor Saunders made, and I absolutely agree that we really need to be very seriously the whole issue of that modal shift towards active travel in our local plan. It's demands very strong change. So the suggestion I would have, if the routes, which I think about both cycling and walking, presumably there's an access near the access to the long bridge at the moment, which will take you through into the rain, and then indeed you could go straight down to the road. But you wouldn't have a direct link on a bicycle then into Jubilee Way because of the steps from the wreck up into Jubilee Way. So I wonder whether there might be something in a Section 106 agreement where it might be possible to investigate whether we could put in a ramp or some sort of scheme to allow a cycle to access Jubilee Way, because that does link then people arriving at the station with a big employment site in Faversham. I realise there are complications. There's the municipal charities own the land, as we mentioned through the school or council, so there might be other parties involved in that. But I wonder if that might be getting a little bit more out of the situation.
Thank you. I'll start with the first point just about the noise. So yes, a noise survey was provided by the applicants and a number of mitigation measures, including attenuated ventilation and glazing, was put forward. We've additionally secured a condition 28, which will seek to have further details of those mitigation measures to make sure that they're implemented on site so that future residents are protected as a result of noise. In terms of the access and the ramp to the steps, unfortunately, it's for members to determine what's before them this evening. A number of mitigation measures have been put forward, and the access into the recreation ground will provide a degree of permeability into the rest of the town. But unfortunately, it's not to be determined here to provide a ramp in that particular location, but we think sufficient provision for pedestrian cyclists has been provided in opening it up the site to the rest of the town.
Thank you. Councillor Knights, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is in my ward, and I think it's the design is very pleasing to the eye. I think it's to be welcomed by the local community. I love the fact that there's 1 and 2 bedrooms. I think it's a great application, and I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dender, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Valentine's picked up one of the points I was going to make. I'm looking at this letter from Network Rail received tonight, and they're veiled threat, and that's what it is, a veiled threat. And I read it out: household suffering, amongst other things, noise pollution, traffic movements of large operational machinery, and excessive light pollution from floodlights. When the neighbouring sidings are expanded for stabling HS1 locomotives and carriages. So first I've heard of HS1 locomotives and carriages being down there. Emma's answered the noise, but we're talking about light pollution. And I just wonder if the noise mitigation is going to be enough if they actually do put this kind of equipment down those rails. I specifically bend is where they're saying the sidings are, yeah?
Well, the noise assessment took into account the sort of activities and operations on the railway line, and indeed the site has been designed to allow operational machinery to manoeuvre within the site to get onto Network Rail. So those considerations have been taken into account, absolutely. It's very difficult to receive this, say, very late this evening, but we have considered those issues within the report and found the site to be satisfactory for residential traffic. Well, in terms of the light pollution, it would depend on what Network Rail were proposing to do, but I would imagine it would be a temporary floodlight to facilitate works, but they've not specified exactly where or how this will take place. It's very difficult to say, but residents, I'm sure, would be able to mitigate that impact if it did occur.
Okay, thank you. And finally, I'll come to Councillor Martin, then we'll take this one to the vote.
Just briefly on that point around noise and whatnot. It's funny how Network Rail weren't there objecting about the potential noise when the Gravely Road brownfield site was developed next to it. They hadn't previously gathered. It's funny how they weren't objecting when the Love Lane estate was built, when Black Lane estate was built, all of which have properties much closer to the sidings. Yes, they do store HS1 stock and function sidings. They try not to do it because it gets graffitied very quickly because it's quite accessible. It's over the fence from the bridge. So it's unlikely that they would stock that right next to an easy to access point. They don't like their driving trees getting tagged. Quite frankly, it might give them a bit of security compared to what they've got at the moment. It is Network Rail trying to throw their dumping up the pram, because they did not get as much money as they thought they would for a site they sold. It's not unusual. As I say, I think these guys are going to probably be further away from the railway line than I am. My property was built many years ago.
Okay, thank you. Members, take this one to the vote then. Those in favour of the Gospel recommendation?
Is that with the amended tabled update? That we can officially amend that?
Yes. Unanimous, members. Thank you. So permission is granted subject to the issue of the decision notice. I'm now going to move on to item 2.2, please. And this is item 21/505544 full. And it's Hillyfield, Hartsdale, Ford. Thank you for an outline on the update, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm William Allwood, Faversham team leader. I've been in the position here for 3 days, so please excuse me if I mispronounce local road names. This application is for revisions to an extent planning permission for the demolition of a bungalow and garage at an extra of 6 houses, garages and parking and associated works. The principle of development has been established previously and an exempt permission is in place at the site, which can be implemented because it's been saved and all of the previous planning conditions have been discharged. The proposal will allow for the delivery of housing on this site where we don't have 5-year land supply. In terms of the report, I just want to bring up some images. I'm just struggling at the moment with my colleague's computer, so apologies.
Sorry, man, if I open the thing here, through things. Yeah.
Members, just whilst we resolve the IT issue, I think it's appropriate that we all take a 10-minute comfort break. Return to this one. Thank you.
I'm sure. PDF, so most likely a PDF on screen. that's what we basically got the better. Firstly,
Okay, members, officers, members of the public. Thank you for your forbearance. We now resolve the IT issues. And we shall continue with the officers' outline and updates on this application, being 21/505544/full, which is Hillyfield, Arcelate Road, Borden. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies to members. So this is the application for revisions to an extent planning permission land at Hillyfield, Arcelate, Borden. As I previously said, the principal development has previously been established and saved in terms of physical works being carried out on the site. That's been confirmed by officers of the council. The development of site for 6 houses will contribute towards land supply of the borough, consistent with the BPF. If I can quickly run through some imagery. This is the plan showing the site in red, and the area to the north, patch on in brown is the conservation area boundary, together with listed buildings in red. And I'll move on to show the approved layout under the 1996 planning application. This image, as you can see, it shows the current layout on the site with the access to the north off of Washley Hill. Improvements are also shown to the access to Hart Divide. In terms of the elevational treatment and layout and design, let's run through some of the images showing contemporary approach to housing compared to a more traditional approach previously. The six 4-bed units, making some reference, I suppose, to Art Deco type design. It's render with cedar roofs and also with photovoltaic roofs as well, within the roofs as well. I'll just quickly draw members' attention to some of the commentary within the application. Basically, there aren't any objections from statutory consultees, and on page 245 of your report, you will see in paragraph 6.15 the comments of the Conservation and Design Officer, who has concluded that the proposal will have a neutral impact and would not cause any harm to the character and appearance of the conservation area and the setting of listed buildings. I'll also draw members' attention to page 237, which sets out the sustainable measures incorporated within the site, which of course wouldn't have been included within the original planning approval granted in 1996. So that is a genuine benefit to the scheme in terms of seeking to address climate change matters. The application, members, is before you with the recommendation for approval subject to planning conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I now invite Clive Jenkins, please, to speak on this item?
Yeah, good evening, councillors. We're not objecting to the houses being built, but they must be right houses in keeping with the local area. The revised design for white rendered walls and flat roofs is not keeping within the local area, where properties are predominantly brick-based walls and pitched clay tile roofs. The proposed houses are more in keeping with designs found at the seaside rather than the village location.
do not reflect the positive characteristics and features of the locality in accordance with policy DM14. The designs and appearance are far from sympathetic and appropriate to the location as indicated in the plan. The report has also stated that the properties would not be screened, therefore they will stick out like a sore thumb. Certainly the impact will not be neutral. The lack of a 5-year housing land supply is not a reason to accept the wrong houses. Whilst the footpath is proposed, it should be located on the north side of Washley Hill rather than the south side. About 95% of users, pedestrian dog walkers, ramblers and horse riders turn left into Washley Hill from the village and then turn left at the top to take a track to join Starvega Lane and return in the village via Riddles Road and Borden Lane. Alternatively, the reverse route is taken. The reason given by the agent in the report for citing the proposed footpath on the south side is to provide a path to footpath ZR 140 by turning right at the top of Washley Hill. However, footpath ZR 140 is substantially and significantly less well used than the circular village route, and yet this proposal seems to cater for the minority. I note the officer writing the report has not visited the site and is clearly unaware and misinformed use of Washley Hill. The proposed footpath would only be used by approximately 24 development residents and unlikely to be used on a daily basis, and a minority of other users. Locating the footpath on the north side of Washley Hill would provide safety for the residents of Highbanks House, the entrance to which is not shown in any of the submitted drawings, to access their garage and maintained hedge boundary. The footpath can be continued past Highbanks House garage on the north side and up to the public footpath, offering improved protection at both ends of the footpath. Another issue is that cars and lorries will mount the proposed footpath on the south side at Hartley Light Junction, as there is a vehicle pull-in place to let oncoming cars pass out along Hartley Light. Widening the entire length of Washley Hill would further improve, given the significant increase of vehicle movements from 4,000 per year to over 20,000 plus deliveries. The residents also feel working time should be the same as Greystone's development. Less than 100.
That's your 3 minutes. Thank you. Can I now invite Claire Lander, please, to speak on this item?
Chairman and councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this application. The most important point is that planning permission is already in place for 6 houses and garages on the site. Previous planning permission was started and can be built out at any time. As the officer's report notes, the principle of development has already been established. The new proposed layout largely follows the already approved layout. There is no increase in height compared with the approved scheme. The volume of built development with this alternative scheme is less than the approved scheme. The scheme was altered during the application at the request of officers to reduce the scale of the houses. The design creates modern, exciting, sustainable dwellings that respond to current day living with open plan space and contemporary architecture. There is an eclectic mix of housing styles in the area, and the proposal will add to this mix. Areas of render and wooden detailing, for example, replicate elements that are present in the local area. Contemporary housing is now recognised as an acceptable aesthetic for new buildings, which means stepping away from the idea of traditional pitched roofs and the pastiche of past period architectural styles. The council's conservation officer notes that the design is high quality and well designed, and it would contribute to the varied building styles in the village. The conservation officer notes that the dwellings will barely be visible from most of the surrounding area. Overall, the revised scheme is far more favourable than the already permitted scheme, offering a reduction in scale on the site compared with the approved scheme, a high quality design development, electric car charging for all dwellings, sustainable measures including air source heat pumps, PV panels, sedum roofs, ecological enhancements and a biodiversity net gain. These things have not come about with the already approved scheme and are significant benefits to the current proposal. All technical points have been addressed within the application to the satisfaction of the planning officer and the technical consultees. The issue of the footpath has been addressed in officers' reports. Landscaping is provided on the boundaries and throughout the site. The proposal will bring about much needed housing immediately at a time when the council does not have a 5-year housing land supply. It is therefore respectfully requested that members support the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now move the officer recommendation. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Jones. And just Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Obviously talk about the 5-year housing supply. They've already got permission for 6 houses. They can deliver them when they wish. This is about the appearance of these new designs, and they really are not in keeping with the area. To suggest that, they will, it'd be hard to see them. I wonder if the officers have got a view of the site from the footpath that's indicated in purple on the map.
That is looking south along the public footpath and the existing lines at the end of the lane.
Okay, what I was asking for was the view when you walk towards this development from footpath. I think it said not 140, but the other one. You will be walking towards this development. It is your first view of Borden. It is this is the impact on the countryside that you will see, and that's what you will see. And I think that is totally out of keeping with a rural design. It looks like you're coming onto the edge of a large town. This is not what is appropriate in the countryside. Now, it does that the Conservation Design Officer does admit, but it has the potential to affect the setting of the heritage assets mentioned. And although he personally thinks it would not significantly affect it, this is a subjective view. That stretch of road has some very old, very historic buildings on it. This will totally detract from the Hearts Delight conservation area. This will totally detract from the setting of this rural lane, and especially from the footpath, which you can see in purple. You're walking along that line, all you're looking at is this new development, and it is not in keeping. So we accept the fact that 6 houses can be built there. They've got that permission. They could start work on that tomorrow. It is a more in keeping design, but it looks better in this part of Borden. I also agree, KCCs are rarely helpful, but it's been pointed out to them on numerous occasions, and the speaker was quite right. This route is often used by dog walkers and ramblers, and they do the circuit. They walk up Washley Hill, and just that they've got to cross over and then cross back. I suggest most of them won't. So what you're doing then is actually putting people on the wrong side of the road in competition with traffic. The footpath or pavement, I'll call it pavement, the pavement should go where people want to use it, not where it's convenient for developers and highways to say, oh, that's easiest to put it there. It should go where it'll be used, and that is on the opposite side. But the real issue here, I think, is that we've got an existing commission. It's a far better looking proposal than what has come forward. It might be modern and exciting, but it's not in keeping with this area. So, and if we refuse this, it's not going to affect our 5-year supply because they've already got permission. They can build tomorrow. Well, can't, we'll have to start and do other bits, but you know what I'm saying. So I really would recommend that we reject this on the grounds that it is housing not in keeping with the local area. It will have a negative impact on the approach into the village from the countryside, and the footpath on the wrong side of the road.
Thank you. Members, anybody else want to comment on this? Councillor Henderson, please.
Yeah, I think these kind of debates are really quite interesting because Borden, as with other villages in Swale, other of the towns in Swale, and indeed around the south of England, have developed over hundreds of years. And you will never find a village, or I certainly hope you won't, or town, which is stuck in a particular era. That there are, I know Borden well, and that there are some very attractive old buildings in it. I mean, not least obviously the church. And those buildings are very attractive, but they're part of a developing scene. And I cannot understand, I mean, Councillor Baldock says the officers are giving a subjective vision. Well, to an extent that's true, but then so is Councillor Baldock. And you expect in towns and villages to see housing and other buildings from the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th centuries. Well, we're now almost a quarter of the way through the 21st century. And it seems to me perfectly feasible that designs not only could, but should develop. I've looked at these particular designs. I confess I have not looked at the 86 or 91 or 96 designs, but they show an overall development of an area, and that to me is to be welcomed, not rejected. And if we reject this and say go ahead with 96, then what happens to the biodiversity gains? What happens to the improvements that the new design is making? I think this is a logical and acceptable development of a village with very varied housing and buildings in it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'm just going to bring in Mr. Elgar, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is an interesting one. I think it's one that I appreciate the concerns raised by Councillor Baldock, but I think, as Councillor Henderson said, there is quite a variation of architectural styles and ages of properties. Certainly the stretch between the two conservation areas, there was a lot of modern buildings. And if I can just share my screen with you for a moment, just to aid the consideration of this. Bear me a second. Here we go. Right, so this is the stretch of housing adjacent to the site. You can see there's quite a wide variety. They're all modern houses. There's a wide variety of houses, and in fact they're further up, just a bit further up, just immediately north of the immediately north of the application site. There is a property with a flat roof design built in render. You can see it there. I hope you can see that. So I'm not saying that should be used as a precedent, but I think the site in question is quite sort of visually discreet. It's heavily treed around. There's more landscaping proposed, and I think the idea is that it will be a landscape-driven design. Also, as the agent has indicated, it would bring additional sustainability, sustainable construction improvements over the existing design. It's not really seen, certainly not seen from the Harmons Corner conservation area. There's very limited intervisibility with Heart's Delight conservation area. Just bear me a second. There we go. So the site is here. This is Harmons Corner conservation area here. There's a bend. You can't. There's no intervisibility between the site and the edge of the conservation area here. And there's quite a distance from this site to the northern edge of the Heart's Delight conservation area. And there's, if I go to, I can manage to move this out of the way. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. So yes, so your site is in here. You've got a large degree of existing mature trees here, and this is the edge of the Heart's Delight conservation area. So any development here is going to have no real impact on the setting of the nearest, or the edge of the conservation of the nearest listed building. So whilst I can appreciate that there may be a preference for the more traditional design, I think it would be a very, very difficult decision to defend a refusal of this application on appeal, which is why I've raised no objection to it, and I think subject to conditions that have been recommended around landscaping and removal of permitted development rights, I think the officer recommendation is fully appropriate. I hope that's helpful, Chairman.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Martin, please.
Thank you, Chair. This committee has been very keen at times to stress the need for environmental protections when we're for enhancements. Developments. I think we've bullied and cajoled developers at times to secure additional, whether it be PVs, whether it be more EV charge points, whether it be faster EV charge points. This is a proposal that I'm just listening through and thinking, well, how many times have we asked for hedging rather than fencing? How many times have we asked for SLC pumps? How many times have we asked for photovoltaics? And it's here in front of us. It's being offered. And in terms of the design, actually looking at the drawings, it's a design I quite like, and it's a step towards the modern. And actually, some of the prettiest streets that you will come across are those where there is a blend of architectural styles stretching right back, where you might start with that little tiny cottage on the very end that was built in the medieval period, and you slowly progress towards houses built right up to the 1930s, 40s, and probably not the 50s and 60s, where you've got some of those awful prefabs. But as a general rule, you have got some variety in there, and they are generally well regarded. I think it will take time for that white render to mature into the landscape, certainly, but I think it's a good addition to the area.
Thank you, Councillor Winkles.
Thank you, Chair. Architecture of the properties in the area. Can I just, if possible, please just see what the existing bungalow looks like, one that's proposed to demolish?
Well, through you, Chair, I mean, the existing bungalow is a typical 1950s, 60s single-story bungalow with garage with a pitch tile roof, albeit it's state of repairs and what it used to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just quickly come back. Is it vacant? Is it empty property? Is it still lived in?
It's derelict.
It is derelict. That gives you an idea what we're talking about. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock.
I was just going to say it is derelict. They scraped the roof off, so they didn't have to pay council tax on an empty building, and covered the environmental concerns were indicated by the fact that loads of fiberglass went all over the local area.
Thank you, members. I don't see anybody else indicating, so we'll take this one to the vote. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Those against? Abstentions. So that's carries, members, 14 for, 2 against and 1 abstention. So permission is granted subject to your decision notice. Right, we're going to now move on to item 3.1, which is the last one we've got a speaker on this evening. And this one is 5 the Wineycock, Newnham, Kent. And I'll thank you for an outline and any updates, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. This is a proposal for a number of extensions to the property, and one that's, should we say, the bone of contention in terms of members, sorry, for officers, is the 2-storey rear extension that's proposed on this property. It's 6.7 metres in depth, and we're concerned about the impact on the adjacent semi-detached property, and it's going to be a prominent extension. You can see it from Seed Road as you approach the property in Newnham. The council's adopted SPG regarding extension states for first floor rear extensions. There should be no more than a projection of 1.8 metres along the common boundary, whereas this would, as I say, project 6.7 metres, and therefore we consider that the proposed rear extension would be excessive in depth, bulk and scale and have a harmful impacts on the adjacent semi and the street scene as I say, it's prominent from Seed Road. The other extensions to the property, which is a single-storey rear extension, a single-storey side extension, and front bay, we have no objections to. It is purely and simply the scale and size of the rear extension, which is on the screen now, and you can see the projection along the members where the where the cursor is this is the 2-storey rear extension that I'm referring to. This is the pair of semis, and this is the adjacent semi-detached property. They do have a single-storey rear extension at the moment, which is a similar depth. It's about 6.5 metres, but it is a single-storey with a flat roof. This is, as I say, 2-storey. You can see that it is below the ridge. Nevertheless, it's 2-storey in form with a pitched roof, and you can see the depth of the extension on the screen with the curve. Hopefully, you can see the curves moving across. That's the depth of the extension. We could just show you the photographs of existing property. And through, that's the driveway, the existing driveway. This is the front elevation of the property. It's a typical airy house. There's many of those in rural areas. You'll see the one on the right hand side of the screen has got a brick screen, brick exterior is intended to do the same on this property, but no issues with that. It's a good solution and a good improvement to the property, I believe. This is the existing rear projection. Sorry about the sun on this, but you can see that that's just over 6.5 metres. You got a small lean-to at the left-hand side of the screen. And the adjacent properties you can see is just beyond the roof there. This is the pair of properties from the rear. Another view of the rear of the property with the existing extension. That's the side as you see it from Seed Road at the moment, with the existing rear extension. You can see single story there in nature. This is the adjacent property with their existing extension. Just another view of it again. And this is a photograph from Winnicott to the rear. There's some properties at the rear of this site, which would also see the two-story rear extension. Thank you, Chairman. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffers. Can I now invite Mr. Colin Hewlett, please, to speak on this item?
Thank you, Chair and members. Good evening. Planning Commission's thoughts as previously defined. The officer's report confirms that the following parts of the application, in effect most of it, are considered acceptable, as was highlighted. Namely, the ground floor rear extension, the proposed orangery at the rear, the side porch, the front bay window, and the replacement of windows, doors, brick facade and tiled roof. Why then is the application recommended for refusal? The sole element which is considered unacceptable is the first floor over the entirety of the acceptable ground floor rear extension. However, the recommended reason for refusal attacks the whole of the two-story rear extension rather than just the first floor. Reason for refusal, as drafted, therefore conflicts with the conclusions of the officer's report. In determining the planning application, planning law requires that applications for planning permission be determined in accordance with the development plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. However, the reason for refusal in the officer's report considered an arbitrary 1.8 metres taken from the SPG as the only relevant planning consideration. This is simply not correct. The figure is not part of policy of the development plan or national guidance. It could not be, as each application has to be determined on its own merits. Furthermore, the NPPF at paragraph 128 confirms in respect to design guidance and codes, of which the SPG is one, that the level of detail and degree of prescription should be tailored to the circumstances and scale of change in each location, and should allow a suitable degree of variety. Moreover, the officer chooses to give no weight to other relevant planning considerations, namely third-party views, specifically the comments of the Parish Council. The report simply notes that the Parish Council supports the application and that there are no third-party comments for or against. Both these material considerations should be given significant weight, but were given none. While it's clear that the Parish Council have responded to the application on its merits, the recommendation is, on the contrary, simply based on a slavish adherence to the figure of 1.8 in the SPG. However, in applying the SPG, the officer report is in itself inconsistent. Whilst relying on the figure of 1.8 for extensions, the officer report applies a sensible and pragmatic approach to the porch. This is rightly considered acceptable, even though it projects more than 1.2 metre policy guidance in the SPG. It is unreasonable, therefore, not to apply the same logical approach to the rear extension in this specific instance. Parish Council, by virtue of their support and interpretation, agree that policy DM14, DM16 is satisfied. The committee is therefore asked to endorse these reasonable
proposals. Thank you. Thank you very much. I now move the officer recommendation. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Simmons, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I hear what the officer is saying about the size of the extension being more than what is normally permitted, but I think that this is a unique site in that it is the end of the Winnicott. It's got the house has a large garden, so there's plenty of space there. And I do think that I'm sure many of us in our wards have got area houses which have been transformed in this way with the brick cladding and extensions to make them serviceable family homes. And I think that the parish council have raised no objection to this. They see it as being an improvement. I believe that this is one of only two in Winnicott which haven't been brick clad, and I think it's to be approved. I think it should be approved, and I think it's also relevant that the next door neighbour has made no objection, as has nobody else. So there have been no objections to it from local residents. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It hasn't been mentioned particularly, but this is AONB, and on page 340 we have the guidelines for is or not appropriate in the AONB, and furthering the delivery of the AONB's management plan, conserving and enhancing special qualities and distinctive character of the AONB. I'm not sure it does that, but I'm surprised that we were as supportive of it as we are. I think the office isn't right on this. You know, we do have a duty to protect the AONB. There isn't a justification for this approach. Therefore, it's not an exceptional circumstance. I can't see any reason to support it, but I'll be going with the officers.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, please.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, both its position in the AONB and whether it does any harm. Can I ask the head of planning, if we were to approve this, does it provide any damaging precedent for other plans which are likely or not likely to come forward?
Chair, planning permission per se doesn't create a precedent because every application needs to be dealt with on its merits. It's more appeal decisions which create a precedent that we need to follow, although as our legal colleague said earlier on, not slavishly. So it's not about creating a precedent through a planning permission. That doesn't happen.
Thank you. Well, in that case, given that there are no objections, given it doesn't create a precedent, and given presumably it creates the sort of house that somebody wants to live in, I can't actually see that there is any reason to refuse it.
Thank you. Councillor Dender, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I wonder if you could put that picture up again from the garden. Yeah, that one. I'm looking on the left-hand side, which I think where the two-floor extension would be. If you look beyond that, and you see the roofs of houses all the way along back there, yes, and you imagine the two floors up there and a massive extension going beyond the lean-to there, yes, then to me that is completely unfair. And if you look at the diagrams that Andy showed at the beginning, you can quite clearly see that it is overbearing to the house next to it. So, but at the point I make, picking up Councillor Simmons said, all the other bits are fine. It's only this 6.2 extension, the second floor of this 6.2 extension, that spoils the rest of it. So, I have to go with the officer's recommendation. It's a great pity we can't approve all the other bits, but we can't implement. If we could, I would, but I will go with the officer's recommendation.
Yeah, I'm just going to come to councillor Jayes in a second, but I'd just like to have planning to speak for a second.
So I just want to seek some clarification, Andy. There are roof lights in the proposed roof of this extension, is that correct?
Yes.
And those roof lights overlook? Well, not overlook, but they're on the side of the.
They're on the side with the adjacent.
To the adjacent
semi,
property, yeah.
But there's not necessarily, I don't think, an issue there with
No,
overlooking. because
no,
of height.
it's just application.
Thank you, councillor Jayes.
Thank you, Chair. 5.1 reports to the site notice displayed, but it doesn't say if any letters were dropped to residents. We don't actually know if there was objections, if lists weren't dropped. Were they dropped? They were, it just doesn't say. Okay. My other one is, obviously if we refuse, they get a second bite of cherry, don't they? They can come back again with a better application, so I don't see any reason not to refuse this. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, councillor Martington.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I could make a comment, really, I suppose. I'm intrigued by the word orangey, because I've worked on a few Victorian oranges in my time, you know. So I assume this is just a modern one, just some of the pink plants, because a real orangey is usually a low glass roofed and fronted extension. It has winder mechanisms to open the roof up to the air, and it's a slab floor. And there's these 6 foot deep compost area, openings for a compost for the winter. If you throw it over, that creates the warmth. The Victorians used to bring semi-precious, semi-tropical plants in for the winter, and then they would subdue the. But that's what an orangey is, and I assume this is just an orangey name, but is its purpose to have plants into it? So that's the question I'm asking. Thank you.
Did you add anything to that history lesson, Mr. Jeffers?
I think I might struggle. It's got a sort of, it's a living area on the floor plan. I think perhaps it's a grand term to use there. There are 2 large roof lights in that single story rear extension, which do create a modern day orangery, if you like. So I'll accept that. Thank you.
Councillor Baldock, please.
Thank you, Chairman, for indulgence. If we are going to refuse this, I'd appreciate the head of planning's advice on whether or not we should include policy DM24 in the reason for refusal. It's the AONB one, page 340.
It wouldn't be inappropriate to include a reason, but I don't think it's your strongest reason for refusal. I think the reason for refusal, as stated in the officer report, is it has strength, has no strength.
Okay, thank you. So members, those in favour of the officer recommendation for refusal? Those against? And abstentions? That's 13 for refusal, 2 against refusal and 1 abstention. So permission is refused subject to again to the issue of the decision notice. Thank you, members. We've got to now wind our world all the way back to the beginning to deferred item 2. And this one is 22/501315 and it's St Maur's the Street. Thank you for an outline and any updates, please.
Thank you, Chairman. There's no actual update to the item. albeit that we have looked at alternatives with the agent in terms of different colours of boarding that's proposed. But we did feel that black was probably the most appropriate, and it's in keeping with one or two of the buildings in the surroundings. I think there's a building called the Barn, which is a few buildings along to the east of the site, which has got some quite heavy black boarding on the building, and it's also very close to the highway. Painted brickwork was mentioned as well. We've looked at that with the agents. The adjacent building to the west, St Martin's Cottage, the owners there complain of it actually being constantly dirty and marked because of passing traffic. Now, that is also close to the highway, so it may be a reason why it does get so dirty. Also, members should note there's a similar glazed front extension to a building not far away around the corner in Wises Lane, probably called Islay, I think it's called. It's not in the conservation area, but it is close to the Baldwin Conservation Area. This property and the adjacent properties are well within the conservation area. The scheme in front of you is the same one that was put in front of members on the 23rd of June. The proposed extension will be 8.7 metres from the side wall of the existing bungalow to the east ridgeways. And given that separation distance, we don't feel that there's any significant harm to the adjacent property in terms of sunlight. And it should be noted that the proposed extension will not project beyond the rear wall of ridgeways or St Martin's Cottage. Proposal involves raising the ridge by 0.7 metres and having a two-storey rear extension 4 metres in depth, which would be approximately 4.5 metres from the eastern boundary of ridgeways. And the living accommodation, as I already said, is actually further away than that boundary. So this recommendation is the same as it was before in terms of for members. The conservation that's for approval. Conservation officer is on the call, I believe. So if members have got any questions about the conservation area or the impact that this may have, then I'm sure Mr. Alba will be there to help. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffers. I move the officer recommendation. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Joyce. Councillor Baldock, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just ask the officer what to read out the resolution that was moved by the committee last time this came here. I'll do it. The resolution was the application blah de blah be deferred to allow for further discussion with ward members to determine an improved design and look at any potential loss of light issues with the neighbouring properties. When did you approach the ward members to fulfil that recommendation?
Well, I'm not the case officer, so I didn't, but I suspect you're going to advise me that that wasn't the case.
Yes, we have not. I don't know about the other ward member, he's not here, but I certainly wasn't approached about it. And it concerns me that this committee specifically made a resolution to involve the ward members in the discussion. That hasn't happened, and they're coming back with exactly the same proposal. You heard the purpose, this committee deferred this on this basis to have a discussion that involves the ward members, and it just simply hasn't happened. I think that is of major concern that the committee can pass that resolution and it just not be acted on. There are problems with this application. It does not fit the street scene. It would look hideous. But we kind of agreed that the last time that it was at this committee. There was a strong feeling that it wasn't appropriate, and that's why we deferred it, or why you deferred it, for those further discussions. Nothing has changed, and I would recommend that we reject this because it really is not in keeping with the street scene and with the surrounding properties.
Thank you, Councillor Winters.
I'll take totally on board what Councillor Baldock said. Can I propose that we have a further deferral on this so that the ward members are consulted? I've got a second.
Yes, Mr. Algar, can you just come in on that one for us?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this one's been quite a difficult one. Obviously, we took on board the concerns of the members at the last committee meeting, and myself and the case officer raised those concerns with the agent for the applicant, and made a number of suggestions to change the design to try and address members' concerns. The applicant, I think, was unwilling to make any material changes, and we felt that the changes that they were agreeable to actually made things possibly slightly worse than better, which is why the end result is that you've got the same proposal back in front of you. I can't answer for why there wasn't a liaison with ward members, and I can only apologise for that. It's a difficult one. I think it would be probably a difficult one to defend on appeal. I think if you read in the report that I've suggested that there is this kind of group of 4 bungalows in the street scene that are more modern. They're all modern, sorry. They do form a sort of composition, but it's quite hard to appreciate that composition in the street scene because of the distance between them, because of intervening trees, and because of sort of various alterations that have been carried out to the bungalows under permitted development rights. They're not particularly special in terms of their design quality, the properties either. Otherwise we would have probably considered putting an Article 4 direction on them to protect that composition. Yes, the changes to the proposed bungalow are quite sort of quite significant, but they do. I think the net result of those changes is arguably probably a neutral one. It's yes, it's increasing the height of the bungalow, it's changing the facing materials, but it's set back from the road. It's removing a fairly ugly box dormer on the rear elevation, which is quite clearly visible at the moment. And I think it's fairly inevitable that certainly the 2 end bungalows in that group will sort of change over time so that they all have their own individual character. There's 2 in the middle which are semi-detached, which arguably might sort of maintain some kind of coherence between them, but I think it's fairly inevitable that those 4 bungalows will sort of face some degree of change, and it's about managing that change so that it's sensitive to the character. And as my colleague William referenced, there is weatherboarding elsewhere in the near vicinity, including the barn conversion just a little bit further down to the south, which I can bring up on the screen for members to show if that would be helpful. So I think it's quite a sort of a funny balanced one, but as I said, I think this would be a difficult one to defend on appeal, which is why I feel unable to raise any objection to it. And I hope that's helpful, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Algar. I've just had a conversation with our legal officer, who confirmed that it is possible to defer this one again. I'm not particularly enthused by the fact that the ward members weren't consulted. And so on that basis, if I have somebody from the floor that wishes to put a further deferral to allow ward members to be consulted on the matter. Yeah, Councillor Henderson.
I did put my hand up some considerable while ago really following councillor Baldock's initial point, this committee decided to consult ward members. That consultation must be carried out. It actually said discussion with ward members to determine improved design. I might have wished that it said discussion between ward members and the applicant to agree and improve design, but there is no doubt if this committee decided to consult ward members that must happen before we make a decision on it.
Absolutely right, and that's the point I just made.
If there's a need for a proposal, then I would propose a further deferral to meet the requirements of the meeting on the 20, whatever it was, the 23rd of June.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Do you have a seconder for that proposal?
Seconded.
Councillor Winters, thank you. Councillor Beers.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. My only comment on that, we've just heard from Mr. Algar that when they spoke to the applicant, they weren't prepared to make changes. If members feel that strongly, maybe they should make a decision this evening to refuse this, because if the applicant has indicated they're not prepared to make changes, there's no point kicking it down the road.
Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, my feeling on this is that the previous committee indicated they were not happy with the design. They kicked it back to say, you know, have a discussion with ward members, see if there could be an agreeable approach. The applicants have indicated they're not that willing. Maybe they will be if there's a further deferral, but if they're not that willing, then surely the recommendation should have come back, bearing in mind what the position of the committee, it should have been there is no agreement with the applicants. So the recommendation I think should have been for refusal. But if there's a further deferral in order that we can put forward our concerns and what we would find acceptable in line with the local area, then maybe that's the way forward. I will support deferral or rejection.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffers.
Just a point of clarification. The applicant did suggest a couple of changes. One was lighter boarding, or a mixture of black boarding and lighter boarding on the same building, which was something that we didn't feel was appropriate. And not quite stripes, but it was. I have seen a couple of emails, and as I say, one was actually to have light boarding, weather boarding to the building rather than dark. So there may be some scope in terms of changing some of the materials on this, which may be more in keeping with what members' views are about this building. I think they were fairly keen to keep some of the window design, but certainly some of the materials, external materials, might be something they would look at if members were to defer tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, members. So we've got a proposal on the floor for deferral. Those in favour? Those against? And abstentions? That's 13 for, 4 against and 1 abstention. So the item is further deferred for discussion with ward members and the applicant. Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to deferred item 3. And this one is the Old House at Home, 158 to 162 High Street, Sheerness. I thank you officer for an outline and any please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. This application relates to the demolition of an existing vacant public house to facilitate the erection of a mixed-use development comprising a microclub on the ground floor and 8 flats above. Members may recall that this application was originally presented to the committee on the 12th of May, and the item was deferred due to the fact that members felt the design could be improved. Feedback at the time was that members were looking for a more traditional design and that they would prefer a stronger roof profile.
Since that time, the agent has made considerable efforts to address the concerns raised by members in that meeting, and he has spent a considerable amount of time liaising with the Conservation Officer in order to obtain detailed feedback and address any constructive comments received. So I'm just going to present the revised drawings to you tonight. For those who weren't present at the 12th of May committee, this is the existing site plan. So for those of you that weren't present at the 12th May committee meeting, this is the existing site plan. See that the site is located in a corner plot at the junction of the High Street and Millennium Way. This is a picture of the existing elevation drawings. And this was the proposed site plan which was presented on the 12th of May. You can see it's a flat roof building with solar panels on the roof, and these are the elevation drawings. Design projected. So this is a revised, updated site plan. You can see that the building remains L-shaped. The elevations have been amended to allow for a strong roof profile, more traditional design in the windows and mansard roof. This is the floor plan. You can see that the flats which are to be provided are going to be a mixture of tenures. So there'll be 4 2-bedroom flats, one of which will be a duplex apartment, one bedroom apartment, and 2 studios. This is a close-up of the materials. Photos of the size. This is the front elevation of the building. This is the side of the property. This is the view from Millennium Way. I just also want to mention that I've further to the tabled updates which were issued yesterday. I've had a further consultation response from Southern Water today. We've commented late on the revised plans. They've provided a series of advisories related to drainage, and these will be added to any future consent as a series of informatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll move the officer recommendation. Could I have a second, please?
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Aiken.
Thank you, Chair. Back in May, I did express how important the design was for the location. To give them credit, actually, I do think that considerable effort has been given to address the concerns that I raised, some of what Councillor Bonnie raised as well. I know others did comment on the layout as well, so in that sense, I'm glad to see that thoughts have been taken in that sense. My opinion on the micro pub hasn't changed. I think 11 is reasonable. Earlier than the neighbouring pubs, so no real concerns there. It is a micro suited application. Yeah, I think it is. I think they've worked hard to address just like the actual original design, and that was my main point of May. I know this was first called in by town council objections, and since May, since the May meeting rather, they've resubmitted an email saying they now have no comment on the design. Yeah, I'm interested if anyone else has any points not already addressed. I'm quite happy to. And I think if it was rejected, I think it's quite a strong case.
Thank you. Councillor Burt, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I will also congratulate the applicant for going away and re-looking at this. I think what they produced is a far more suitable building for the conservation area around Sheerness. It's much more in keeping. And it's also very similar, if you remember back a couple of months, to the application we approved at Bank House, where they were putting an extra floor on top of that. It was a similar sort of design to what they're proposing here. I'm not actually convinced this retail unit will ever become a micropub. I think at some point it'll either become a shop or a change of use for something else, but we're looking at the application in front of us. I welcome the updated comments from the Conservation Officer on the tabled update. And I would just ask, on condition 24, the reason for condition 24 is to ensure that historic building features are properly examined and recorded. I would ask for a slight amendment to that and just add, and where possible, retained. And I don't necessarily mean within the new building, but I'm thinking, for example, I don't believe that most of the historical features of this building are existing. I think over the years it's been slowly eroded to the point where there's not much left. And lots have been made about the fact that there's been a pub on this site since 1860, but the pub that's standing there is not the 1860 building. It's had so many alterations. However, I do believe once they start doing demolitions, they may find some historical parts. And what concerns me is we've had it before, where, for example, when the Halfway House was redeveloped at Halfway, which was a superb development, but when they found all the old style and winch wooden boards hidden, they were skipped. And I think the fact that we're asking them to examine and record historical artefacts, we should also be asking them to put them aside and retain them where possible. So I mean, I welcome the Conservation Officer's comment, but if we can add that as an alteration, but other than that, I'm happy with the application as it stands.
Second that amendment.
Can I come in here, Chair?
Yes, I'm just going to bring Councillor Baldock in quickly, Mr. Olgar, and then I'll come across to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I would second that. We've lost quite a lot of stuff in Sittingbourne High Street when things were developed. So I would totally support any moves that we can do to protect things as they're found and put in a suitable place. I think that's a very good proposal. I'm seeing nodding, shaking heads there. I think the officer should be congratulated on working on this as well as the applicant. I just got one question. Why is it Sheerness is allowed more traditional buildings, yet we've just had 6 modern ones dumped in Borden and we weren't allowed traditional?
I think you should know this, Councillor Baldock, been a very experienced planning committee member. Every application on his merits. Thank you. Okay, so we've got a proposal for that amendment. Yes, so I'm just going to get Mr. Olgar come in quickly, sorry, before we go to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just in relation to that variation condition, I think it's a slightly unusual one, but I think it's probably one that we can try and tweak the wording of the condition. It's actually one that was recommended by Kent County Council because it's more of an archaeological related condition. Also, we don't have that team with us here this evening, but I think we can probably look at if members are happy to delegate that to us to provide a suitable form of wording, we can look at that, and I think that can be done. We would normally expect like a photographic record to be provided, and I'm assuming that's not deemed to be sufficient by members, but that certainly is the sort of normal kind of procedure with situations like this. I don't know if members want to come back on that point, or whether they're actually looking to sort of try and retain the fabric, if there's any sort of historic fabric to speak of. Obviously, it's not a designated heritage asset, so there may be some sort of lower end communal value to some of the items that could possibly be found in the building, and then the question arises: what do you do with those items, physical items? I suppose they could potentially be stored in the Bluetown Heritage Museum. Yeah, I think we can certainly look at rewording the condition, but I wonder whether realistically a sort of photographic record would be sufficient in the circumstances to sort of deal with members' concerns in this respect. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. At this juncture, members, I'd just like to ask for indulgence for an extension to standing orders. On again. Thank you. I'm just going to bring in our head of planning as well quickly.
I think that that we probably need to go away and work out the wording for this. What I'd be concerned about is the condition that requires us to retain any findings without any clear indication of who's going to look after them, who's going to be responsible. Would that be considered an onerous condition? I don't think it would, but I think we need to be careful about how we word it to achieve what members want to achieve. We need to identify a repository for any findings.
Thank you, Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. I think this should be the new normal. If it can be retained on site, that'd be great. And if not, a local museum, I'm sure would gladly welcome certain items.
Thank you, Councillor Martin.
If it helps, I suggest the word off to historical societies to display generally. If they can, they will. If they can't, they won't. And if they can't store it, realistically, it can be stored anywhere else.
Okay, so would the proposal be happy then to delegate that to officers for suitable wording? Councillor Peart?
Yeah, yes, more than happy. And it is, like I say, the example that I gave, there were offers made to take those hand painted signs and it wasn't followed up and they ended up being binned.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, would you be happy as seconder for that?
Yes, except coming back to a point which Dalga made, no photographic evidence is not enough. There needs to be a real attempt to keep anything found. And as Councillor Martin suggested, wording can cover that, and I'm happy that officers do that.
Thank you. So members, we'll go to the vote on this one with the this is the amendment we're going for, sorry. Okay, those in favour of the amendment or addition, I should say. Thank you. I think that's good. Sorry. So you just do it again, members, sorry. So everybody's had to go up. Yeah, that's unanimous, thank you. And now back to the substantive proposal. Those in favour of the officer recommendation. That's unanimous too. So permission is granted as amended, subject to the issue of decision notice. We're now going to move on to item 2.4, which is the stables, Sweepstakes Farm, Lower Hartlip Road, Hartlip. On page 273. And this one is 22/502863/4 and 22/502864/LVC. And what I'll do is take those separately when it comes to the vote. Okay, thank you.
Indeed.
I'll thank you then for outlining the update, please.
Thank you, Chairman. There's no updates to the reports. Just to explain, this is a very minor application. The proposed changes are very minor, they're neutral in nature. What one is to put a flue, a black coloured flue to the main building for a log burner, and the other is on the screen there. You'll see the entrance to the site. This is from the courtyard, internal courtyard. And there's a brick wall on to the left of the entrance there, thank you. But there's a solid gate, which we may have a photograph or two, which is a solid timber gate. That's the one. they're looking to basically reuse that and slightly relocate that together with a pedestrian gate. And this is all to do with the internal arrangements within the courtyard to allow cars to be able to. We've got a layout plan, just showing the change in the layout plan. But it's a very subtle difference. This is right. This is the layout as this is the layout as it is, and where the cursor is the solid timber gates to the courtyard, which is to the north there, just a bit larger. And the yes, thank you. And you've obviously got lower Hartlett Road to the right hand side. Yeah, and the flue is if you show the proposed layout. That's an elevation of the buildings. There's the flue there showing. The proposed layout, it's a very subtle difference in terms of where the gate is, the entrance there. You can hardly notice the difference here. It's within the site, so hence why we're not raising any objection to this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I move the officer recommendation. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Members, anybody wish to speak on it? Councillor Windlass.
I would just like to say I don't think this is harmful at all. So totally behind the officers and motion.
Okay, thank you. So members, those in favour of, first of all, the full application. Unanimous, and the listed building consent. Unanimous too. Thank you very much. We're going to move now on to item 2.5, which is Manor Farm, Key Street, Sittingbourne. And again, I'll thank you for an outline if there is any dates on this one.
Thank you, Chair. The sign is already in situ, as you'll see in the photographs. It's a square sign, 2.4 metres by 2.4, and it's approximately 1.5 metres above ground level. It is, as you can see on the screen there, quite well screened by existing vegetation on the site. The site itself is within the built-up area boundary. It's an allocated housing site. I'll draw members' attention to condition 6 on page 286. This is a consent that's being sought. We're only allowing consent for 6 months here, and this is during the building works for I think it's up to 50 houses on this site, which the outline permission was granted. We've currently got a reserved matters application in with us to deal with that, and we're through negotiations at the moment, which is taking longer than anticipated because I think the developers slightly jumped the gun by putting the sign up. But see what members consider in terms of this. There's a location plan for those members who don't know the site, and we just show you where it is. Just blow that up. That's it. Great. Okay. So the roundabout, the Key Street roundabout, is just to the west. The green little line is the actual sign that's on the site there, and the application for the housing is within the blue area there, and the access to the site is, as you can see on the screen there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffers. I move the officer recommendation. Get a seconder, please.
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Pollock.
Thank you, Chairman. Supplementary planning guidance. The Borough Council will not normally permit advertisements outside town centres, particularly in sensitive areas such as residential area and open countryside. So Yeah, I think it's open countryside. I can understand these signs going up when they are looking to sell their houses. At the moment, this site, they've put an application in to totally change what they've got permission for. And that has been outstanding for a few months. So at the moment, they haven't got houses that they're actually going to sell or even building. So this is a temporary permission until December this year, by which time they've only got a single house going up. They can't be getting people to be interested in the houses because they don't know what sort of houses they've got yet. This is an unnecessary sign. Once they know what they're building and they have a programme of development, because there's still a whole load of issues on conditions that have not been met on this yet. I just think it's entirely premature, and there's no need for it at this time. When there's a need, when they've got something to advertise, fine. At the moment, this is just a horrible little piece of graffiti in the countryside. We don't need to commit it, and it's against 4.1 of our supplementary planning guidance.
Thank you. And Councillor Denver, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I passed this today, actually. Knowing I was coming here tonight, I thought I'd look for it. My wife got very angry with me because I wasn't watching the road properly, and I nearly missed it. It is absolutely not obtrusive at all. You literally have to stop right next to that roadway to see it. It is completely covered by trees. Absolutely no problem at all as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. Councillor Jay,
I think it's unnecessary, Chair. I think we're back looking at this, talking about this in December, and then we're back talking about it in June if it gets 6 months. And we'll be talking about this probably for the next 3 years until they actually get a spade in the ground. So I don't see why we should approve this.
Councillor Boulder.
Yeah, I'm not sure because you can't see it very well and it's unobtrusive. That means we should allow it. Otherwise, we'll have lots of unobtrusive things all over the place. There has to be a need. It has to meet the requirements, and it doesn't.
Thank you, Councillor Beard.
I don't think we're talking about a sign on that picture because it's half the size of the 3 that are on Scottwells Road in Minster that are similar land acquired, more land needed, that are absolutely huge that have been approved by this authority. I don't see the problem with this at all.
Thank you. So I don't see anybody else indicating. Those in favour of the officer recommendation? Those against? And abstentions? 6 against 8. 6 and 4, sorry, 8 against. Yeah. Sorry, Max, you just said that again. So those. We have lost them. Yeah, those for the officer recommendation. 2 minutes, yes. Sorry, the duty mathematician. So 6 for, 8 against, 1 abstention. So that's not carried. So permission is refused subject to the issue of the decision notice. But oh, sorry, apologies. We need a motion. Yes, sorry.
So I think it's important to just point out to members, this is an advert consent. This isn't planning permission. And therefore there are certain factors you can't take into account and others you do need to take into account if you're looking to refuse an application. Immediacy, and there's no actual definition of immediacy in the Act, and highway safety. They're the 2 issues that are grounds in terms of highway safety. I mean, it's in terms of whether the sign's distracting when it's so large and very prominent. So they're the 2 areas that I think members need to focus on in terms of looking to refuse an advertisement application. We have refused an application earlier this year on the other side of Key Street roundabout for 7 signs. And we refused that on grounds of it being prominent and a number of signs and proliferation and the cluttered appearance in a prominent location, which was detrimental to the visual amenities of existing streets. Now, you might want to consider something along towards the end of that in terms of the visual impact on the existing street scene if members were to look at wanting to refuse this application. I don't say any more than that.
Thank you, Dan. Should we have the planning in?
Sorry, just for the purposes of clarity for members, we can't, or we can't refuse an application for an advert consent on the grounds of need. Need is not something we can consider, nor can we consider the content of the advert.
Mr. Baldock.
Okay, I think the fact that Councillor Dendor said earlier he nearly got told off because he nearly had an accident trying to see it. If people are trying to drive around looking for a bit of land that they know isn't available in that area, then trying to find this sign, as already been indicated, can be dangerous to see it. So that is, on highway grounds, it is risky. I think the visual impact on the rural scene is unnecessary and negative, but it contradicts 4.1 of our supplementary planning guidance.
Okay, I'm just going to bring out ahead of planning on the highways element.
But we keep coming back to how you can properly refuse an application for an advert, and you can refuse it on highway safety grounds. However well-meaning the telling of the story was, it is anecdotal, not evidence, and you need to make evidence-based decisions. So one could argue that if you don't know an advert is there, it's not doing its job, but that's not for you to determine as members the effectiveness of an advert.
If that advert is causing people to drive dangerously because they can't see it properly, then that is a concern, isn't it? But anyway, I'm happy just to go with the visual impact on the rural scene and it being against supplementary planning guidance.
Okay, do you have a seconder for that?
Second.
Councillor Winkles, do we wish to speak to it, or do we just want to get onto those next? Oh, Councillor Dender.
Thank you. I feel I have the right to reply here. The point I was making is I knew I was coming here tonight, yes. I wasn't looking to buy any land. Okay, and the point is, and my point is, and I have to make it again, it's not prominent. And it isn't spoiling any scene because you can't see it. The people driving past it will miss it. Now, you can say, as the head of planning has said, that goes to need. Why do you need it in the first place? But that is not a material consideration. The fact is that sign is no danger to the highway because it can't be seen.
Point of order, Chairman, that's not part of the proposal.
Now, I'm just going to bring our legal officer in quickly.
I just thought I would point something out that might help members. Members, if you turn to page 397 of your agenda papers, 397, it's part 5 report, inspector's decision about an illuminated advertising sign. Have a read of paragraph 3 and what the inspector says. There might be something there that might just assist you in formulating your reasons.
Okay, and obviously bear in mind the outcome of that appeal. So councillor Baldock, we've heard your proposal, seconded by councillor.
I would like, having read reason 3, I would like to include the phrase the general character of human impact on general characteristics of the locality.
Okay, councillor Winkler, are you happy for that?
Yes, I'm happy.
Yes, I think it is worth just saying that this is supporting a granting of permission, not a refusal, so. The page 397. Okay. Yeah, okay, right, so here we go then. So those in favour of that proposal? Against? Abstentions. So that's 9 for, 5 against and 1 abstention. It's refused. Thank you, members. Now we come on to finally part 5 items. And does anybody wish to comment on the part 5 items? Try to keep up, councillor Baldock. Councillor Beers.
Yeah, I'd congratulate the officers on 5.1, 5.5 and 5.7. I think they were all delegated refusals and all appeals upheld. Although I didn't attend the appeal, sad as it was, I did go back and watch it on Teams. And I'd like to specifically congratulate Andy Byrne on 5.2, although the decision actually went against us, and I think we've got to come to the fact that the officers very much bolted on Greyhound Road, and I don't think any inspector is going to uphold the decision there. It was a disappointing outcome, but I did think that the officer put in a good show at the appeal and tried their best to fight the corner.
Thank you, I'd reiterate that too. Members, any other observations of the part 5s? Well, you'd be pleased to hear that concludes the meeting. You're all free to return wherever you're going to return to. Thank you all for your time and trouble. Thanks, officers too. And Emma, it looks like you've got a free transfer to the IT department.